What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network. Do you like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake SIlva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome on a Monday night. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We're live on all social media platforms. You can catch me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, and also follow me on Instagram as we're posting up daily content every day of the week. You cannot miss it here on the Snake Sports Talk Show on the Spotlight Sports Network. I am jam-packed with a lot to talk about today, and there's so much that I have to dig into. But first and foremost, because I know a lot of people If you guys are enjoying yourselves on 4th of July this year, be safe, have fun, because I know I'm going to be enjoying myself during 4th of July this weekend. In fact, I actually have a 3-day weekend. Got Monday off. Don't even have to worry about it. And I get to enjoy the holidays. So it's always the best feeling, especially when you're working hard and you're kind of drained, especially here in this Vegas heat. I mean, it drains you. It literally gets all your energy out. But other than that, great to have everybody here. Glad to have all of you guys. What is going on all here onto the chat? JD, what's happening, my friend? Glad to see you. It's been a while. BL, and of course, Spotlight Sports Network, and Dude Baca, what's going on? Spotlight Raiders Talk, my very own Darian Hopkins up over there. What's going on, guys? I appreciate everybody here that's all here onto the chat. We got 7 so far live, and we're only just continuing to grow. We are at 384 subscribers, folks. 384. We are so close to hitting our milestone of 400 subscribers. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button for all latest notifications on future shows and even past shows that you can even watch archived also onto my channel. And share with your friends, share with your family. We really do appreciate your guys' love and support. And I'm also going to have at least a special announcement coming up for the holiday weekend. But first and foremost, I want to get into this. I thought it was really interesting what's been happening in the NBA world. Now, granted, we are in the NBA playoffs, and the playoffs have been so good. I mean, watching Phoenix right now, with their run that they've got currently, and then also watching Milwaukee and Atlanta, Trae Young, Giannis, there's not much more that you could ask for. But I'm going to shift my focus onto something else within the NBA world before I get back into the playoffs, because I feel like that this should be something noted. Okay, I think we all know when we're working at companies, we're working at corporations. You have CEOs, you have managers, you have your top dogs. You have your tops of the totem pole. These are the ones that are absolutely movers and shakers. These are the ones who make the dream happen. Because it initially started so small, they worked their way to get to it, did take a lot of sacrifices, did take a lot of cuts, but they managed to get here. Here's what's interesting. It's all within a team effort. That's what it takes for a business to be successful, a relationship to grow closer and stronger with two people. And on top of that, you also have, in the sports world, the owner, the general manager, the head coach, and then you have the entire team. What's going on, Prince John? And here's what's interesting about this. So, fellow NBA great, mostly known from the Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen, started to come out with something that I thought was really, really interesting. Now, I know that there were certain comments that were actually said prior to this. But let me just tell you exactly what was going on all throughout the so-called Twitter sphere. Oh, well, first and foremost, let me give a shout out real quick to Prince Sean. Happy 14th birthday, my friend. I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on, man. Happy birthday to you. Man, I remember when I was 14. It was a lot of fun. You're making me feel old already, but hope for many blessings for you along the way, and enjoy it. Enjoy it. This is always a fun time. But here's the thing that I will say. So what was happening in the Twitter sphere? So Scottie Pippen, of course, was going back and forth with Stephen A. Smith, and basically saying that LeBron James won a championship without any help. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that really interesting? This is coming from someone, not just anybody, but an NBA great, that when you watched him in the early years in Chicago, okay, Chicago was not built to its best extent like it was at that time. It was not. Michael was fresh out of North Carolina and was not. This is where it's not a knock. This is more of just seeing it from my very own eyes. But Michael was never really the talented basketball player. He was more of the guy who put in the work. He worked hard. He went to the gym. And at the same time, went and practiced on his shots. So he was working. He was a workhorse. He was able to get, to overcome a lot of obstacles to get to this point. You could even look at the histories of Michael Jordan. His brothers, he didn't grow up with a sister. He grew up with brothers. And at that time, they pushed him around, tossed him everywhere, played basketball, shoved him close, and threw a lot of defensive shots at him. That was how he learned. Was not the most talented. Not like some of these players like LeBron James or Kevin Durant or, even Steph Curry. A lot of these game changers within the NBA in this era. But that was fine. The funny thing of it is that ultimately, and Kobe was a one of a kind. A kid out of high school, out of Lower Merion, and Charlotte shoots themselves in the foot every day because of the fact that they let one of the greatest go to the Lakers, and then 20 years later was an absolute legend. Still is to this day. But one thing you got to look at with Scottie Pippen, and here was the response from Stephen A., and I quote, "With all due respect, my brother, this is ridiculous. D. Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, Kyrie and Kevin Love in Cleveland, and Anthony Davis with the Lakers. What the hell is the matter with you? You know basketball. You're a 6-time champion. How could you utter such blasphemy?" The infamous Stephen A. Smith, always catching blasphemy wherever he finds it, right? Oh, there's a blasphemy. How could you possibly speak this in front of me? Let me just break something down to you. Okay. Here's my thing. Scottie Pippen's a legend. Absolutely. But remember something. Scottie could not have won a championship by himself without Michael. And Michael couldn't win a championship without Scottie. Didn't we all learn this from The Last Dance? We've watched it all throughout the episodes. So when stuff like this came out, I thought it was really interesting. And then not to mention the comments that he made with the Chicago Bulls with Phil Jackson and then Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc. I couldn't believe it. And this is somebody who was one of the best Robins to Michael Jordan. Look at all throughout the NBA championships ever. No one won them solo. And here's the other takeaway. And you really thought that Bill Russell won by himself? Sure, he did. But then he also had some specialists, like Havlicek was one of the best defensive specialists for Boston. I mean, I met the guy before once in my lifetime. The guy's taller than me. I look like I'm looking at a ceiling. Like that's how I looked at Bill Russell when I first met him. Great guy. Golfs up out here most of the time here in Vegas. He loves it. But Bill Russell, because of his size and because of his play, we don't talk about it a whole lot. The fact that he was Mr. Celtic, he was also somebody who won majority of championships. We don't talk about it a whole lot. Everybody will think, well, what about Wilt Chamberlain? Wilt Chamberlain couldn't even try to do it himself, even though he was very talented. Wilt Chamberlain was not that guy because that wasn't until you had to have the right pieces around him. Magic just so happened to be one of the most unbelievable players, offensively and defensively. And then comes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then they won multiple championships. Larry Bird had his sidekick. Boston won multiple championships. Everybody had a Robin next to them. Kobe and Shaq. They've won multiple championships with the Lakers. Once Shaq left, Kobe ended up recruiting Pau Gasol, and they won more championships. Everybody gets kind of drawn into this thought, this feeling, that because LeBron James, the 1 year that he didn't have anybody, got them to the finals, but they didn't win it. In Cleveland, they lost to San Antonio. And San Antonio, mind you, had a whole group. Greg Popovich, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. That was a whole group. That's what won a championship. And it blows my mind just hearing this and seeing this. Because remember, if we learned anything through The Last Dance during the shutdown, is that this whole group was magnificent. It was unstoppable. Before them, it was Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Bad Boys. Michael could not get past them by himself. That's when Scottie arrived. Then eventually came Dennis Rodman. And then Steve Kerr. Eventually Tony Kukoc. And then a bunch of others. They were not a terrible team. They just couldn't get past the hump. Because in order to be, quote unquote, champions, it's not a solo gig. It's a teamwork effort. It's a teamwork effort. It's been like that, and it's always been like that. And it always will be. Look at the NBA final or the NBA East, the conference finals right now. Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns, how they got to this point was the fact that Chris Paul, a veteran who took Oklahoma City to the playoffs, who also helped out the Houston Rockets to get to as far as they could until an injury happened and then they get knocked off, but has had the opportunity to work with a youngster like Devin Booker, and they're in the Western Conference Final, leading 3-1 against the Clippers. How about Milwaukee? I know a lot of people will be saying a lot about Chris Middleton. So do I. But Chris Middleton is not a reliable number 2 in any of the other teams except for Milwaukee. If he was in a big 3, he'd be a 3 in a heartbeat. If he was in a big time super team, he'd be a number 4. But Chris Middleton had to overcome those obstacles in order for him to really pick up Giannis. So when I look at this from this general perspective, LeBron James is arguably one of the greatest players that we've ever seen in history. Absolutely. Well, yeah, and John Stockton and Karl Malone. But here was the difference, though. They didn't make it far enough to win an NBA title. That was the unfortunate part for Utah. Even though that was such a great group, that was such a dynamic duo, they just couldn't do it. Because Karl Malone, at that time, moved to the Lakers to try to get a title. That's what it was all about. Gary Payton was just about the same way when you had him and Sean Kemp. So that's my thing. There is nowhere written there where it's a solo gig. If that was the case, then a lot more teams would be winning more championships now than ever before, right? That's what it would be. But it's not. So this thing about, LeBron James not having any help, really? I'm pretty sure that in the beginning of his career in Cleveland, he needed all the help he could get. He still couldn't get it. Then he goes to Miami, gets help from Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, Shane Battier, Ray Allen, and Mario Chalmers, and so many others. Goes back to Cleveland, gets help from Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver, lots of players. And they won it. Goes to the Lakers. Says, I can't do it with this young group. I need veteran presence. Get Anthony Davis. They win a championship in 2020. Listen, you could be the best basketball player that's ever walked the face of this earth. But to seriously win a championship, to separate yourselves from the boys to the men, everybody needs help. That's what makes the dream work. You got to have teamwork in the middle of the mix. Otherwise, you're not going to win a championship. It's the bottom line. Utah will not win a championship unless they get somebody up out there, excluding Mike Conley, to help out Donovan Mitchell so that they are not so Donovan Mitchell reliant. The Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic is probably one of the best, exciting young players to even play in the NBA. He needs help. And from what I'm being told, it's not working with Kristaps Porzingis. So he needs more. Damian Lillard, which I'll be explaining about later. He needs help. Probably one of the best generational talents you'll ever see in the NBA. Needs help. Portland has been a snake-bitten organization for so long that they can't even get over the hump to win the championship. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. The Clippers, Kawhi Leonard is a silent assassin for a reason, but he's not verbal. You can't build yourself upon that. So they need another veteran presence or somebody that's a vocal leader that's willing to speak up and maybe get the Clippers over the hump. But they're not going to be better than the Lakers. This whole thing, like, if the Clippers win, they're like, the Clippers are still over. It's not going to change a thing about LA Town. It's not. The Clippers are going to basically be themselves, just with a championship. So I just felt like this was absolute, utter ridiculousness from one of the NBA greats to be speaking out like this. And mind you, Kevin Durant is very talented. But of course, if he wanted to win more championships, he would have never left Golden State. Wanted to prove that he can win it without it. But you have Kyrie who flakes too much. You have James Harden that you don't even know if he's healthy on the floor. And all of this stuff. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. All right. This NBA playoffs has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun and it's getting close. But let me just tell you something. I've been very impressed with how the Phoenix Suns have been playing. I've even said this before the series or the season started. The second Chris Paul got to Phoenix, I said, this is a playoff team. Enough said. I didn't predict that the Suns would get this far to the Western Conference Final. Nobody does. They just so happened to have gotten the right pieces. The youngsters grew. DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, and so many others. They've all grown. And having a veteran leader in Chris Paul, and not to mention, you got to give credit to Monty Williams for making this whole thing happen. But this Phoenix Suns team, I think, is on the rise. We may not see that as it is right now, but this could very much be a Phoenix Suns team that could very much be causing problems for the next couple of years. Okay, we know that the Lakers won the championship last year, but they got to get more better pieces around LeBron James. And now there's questions about, Anthony Davis because of the health. That's just who he is. You got the Clippers who are dying to win a championship, but they can't really get, the right vocal people to really move this thing where they can win a championship. The Utah Jazz need more pieces. Dallas needs to give Luka a star. And the list itself goes on in the Western Conference. But from the Phoenix Suns standpoint, the fact that they get all of these young kids, they grow through the system, they play so well. And I think this was just kind of their moment. The second the Lakers went down, they turned around and said, this is their moment. And they have not disappointed. They did so good. And it's interesting. It's really interesting how that all happens. But think about the last couple of groups that the Suns have had. Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Charles Barkley. They had so many really good stars, but the problem of it was that they couldn't even get over the humps of the Lakers. This was during the Kobe days. Because the second Kobe was great and started winning championships, it was hard for Phoenix to get over that hump. They take out the Lakers, and then they said, this is our time. This is our time to finally be champions. Now, we can't jinx this because, number one, they're in the Western Conference Final first. But from the way things are going, it almost makes it feel like that the Suns may be going into the finals, and they'll be the talk of the NBA Finals throughout the whole thing. And rightfully should be. Arizona. Let me just tell you a little bit and piece about Arizona sports. Okay, the Diamondbacks won a World Series in 2001, which, by the way, was the greatest World Series I've watched in my lifetime. I remember watching it, and I got goosebumps from it. But it was down to the wire. It was Game 7, and the Diamondbacks with the big unit, Curt Schilling, Mark Grace, Luis Gonzalez, Craig Counsell. They had a lot of interesting pieces, but they did it. They beat Mo Rivera, and that was the end of it. Greatest World Series. Since then, they really hadn't been themselves. They've made the postseason a couple of times, but couldn't even get over the humps. They couldn't get past the division series. They've been knocked out. And right now, they are not looking like the most attractive franchise right now in baseball, with the fact that they had a 23 road game losing streak. And I don't know what direction they're going. The Arizona Cardinals, okay, they went to the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 43. I was pulling for them. But then Big Ben and Santonio Holmes broke every Arizona fan's hearts. And there were a lot of different views and looks that you could see from that Super Bowl. But Pittsburgh had you right there up on the ropes. And that was what was the plan. Since then, I mean, you got a real good promising future in Kyler Murray, but you're hoping that the defense gets better. The Phoenix Suns. Well, actually, first off, the Coyotes. Oh, dear Lord. You know what the Coyotes have been known for? Are just mostly their throwback sweaters. The Coyotes have not looked like a superior, threatening team in the hockey world. Even though that they've started the hockey in the desert, they haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. And from the process has been mediocre with them. That's why they're in the position that they are in now. Because they still need more pieces, but ultimately, you got to have the right pieces to make this thing work. But only time will tell with these guys. And now they're moving from the Pacific to the Central next year. Because Seattle, the new expansion franchise, the Kraken, are going to be in the Pacific. Now the Phoenix Suns. This has been their moment. This has been their moment since those great groups, since it had been a franchise. And you know what? I might as well walk the valley with them. Because I just think that this has been such a Cinderella story for them. And what Chris Paul has been able to do with not just them, but for Oklahoma City, for Houston, for New Orleans, and for the Clippers, they don't give him a whole lot of credit for a lot of this. And so I'd say, Phoenix, give it your all. It's your moment. Have fun with it and play hard. because a lot of people are already speculating about Milwaukee and so many other teams. But I just feel like Phoenix found themselves into a point where I was like, nobody even thought they would have made the playoffs. They're here. I, for one, did because of the Chris Paul move, but I didn't think they'd get far to the Western Conference Final and now eventually getting into the NBA Finals. But this has been one of the best moments I think I've ever seen with this group, and I'm loving it. So go out with it wholeheartedly and have fun with it. I mean, this is a talented Suns group. I've been very impressed with it, and it's been so much fun. Coming up next, I will tell you this, because I've been hearing a lot about I've basically been hearing a lot about, Major League Baseball's foreign substance policies and everything else, and why it has become a complete circus around baseball. Why did we not end up having this during the steroid use era? It's now becoming such a complete circus. I'll explain at least the rest of that coming up next. And then I'll also be describing at least a little bit of the Stanley Cup final between Montreal and Tampa Bay. You guys do not want to end up missing that here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. All right. So for those of you, we've got a special sale going on right now for the 4th of July. And you guys are going to absolutely love this. But when you go online to the SpotlightSportsNetwork.com, okay, you'll get 20% off of everything your purchase. That's hats, that's t-shirts, that's sleeveless tees. That's a lot of it, especially when we're here into the summertime. What's going on, Sophie? Shout out to you from Argentina. I appreciate you jumping on by. But if you guys want to get geared up for the summertime and you guys want to end up gearing up for your favorite show on the Spotlight Sports Network, go on to SpotlightSportsNetwork.com under the merchandise section powered by Spreadshirt and get yourself geared up today. 20% off on everything you purchase.
Welcome to the My City, My Game pod show featuring Raider J77, your place for all things Raiders and all things Trailblazers. Brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Now let's go.
Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a superstar? Do you really want to get dangerous? Do you even know where the groupies are? Bitches out here be...
Welcome to Hammer's house.
Oh my, such good coffee. Always got to love it when you've got Black Rifle coffee, right? It's the best stuff around. Keeps me energized, keeps me awake. And I've got so much more sports to talk with every single one of you guys. All right. So, all right. First off, Major League Baseball. And listen, they've been taking a whole lot of energy out of me. I mean, they seriously have. My thing with Major League Baseball right now is that all throughout it, we've had so many changes, and all of them are just so happen to be almost all at once. I know that Commissioner Rob Manfred is not perfect. I understand that. And I also did give my 2 cents in about how I feel about him as a commissioner. And the same with all the moves that had been happening. But this foreign substance policy now, because now they're suspending pitchers who have any types of foreign substance and everything, and they have checkups. Well, it just so happened that we had our first victim of it, which was Hector Santiago. And Hector Santiago, like this, you had to have known. Like, you had to have known that at that point, you were going to get caught with it. Everybody knows that they were going to get caught with some sort of substance. You know what's funny about this is I remember the time when Michael Pineda got hit with a foreign substance. Not a whole lot of people talked about it, but it was that foreign substance that was there on his neck. And a lot of people were questioning about that. And the second that he gets checked out, and the second they go and see it, they're like, oh, nope, foreign substance, gone, bye. And that was exactly what ended up happening. So, to this case in point with this foreign substance, and everybody's all freaking out up to this point because of the fact that, because of all this, like, they're not happy with it. Pitchers have been kind of mocking this whole thing. You saw this with Max Scherzer. You saw this with a lot of different players. They weren't happy with it. And look, I don't blame them one bit for that. But at the same time, you got to at least show personal respect for yourself. That's really what it comes down to. I know that because of all these changes that have been happening in baseball, and I've already put in my 2 cents from it, but eventually Major League Baseball is going to figure this out. Because as I've said, the baseball ratings have been dying. They have been dying ever since. They changed the All-Star game from Atlanta to Colorado because of some of the recent events in Atlanta. And the Braves organization was pissed about it. Then the foreign substance policy. And Carlos Rodon mentioned about pitchers getting suspended for this, but yet the Astros walk away with nothing. I know there are a lot of players and there are a lot of teams out there who still remember that they haven't forgotten about what happened with the Astros. I haven't. Lots of other fans haven't. And I've already spoke my piece. But the fact that it's an is what it is type of mentality, that's just the way that it's just been escalated for the last couple, since the suspension or since the championship takeaway. The second they put an asterisk in there, that was it. There were no player suspensions, nothing. But there were fires from Jeff Luhnow and Alex Cora at the time, even though that he was already out. He was already in Boston. And then you also had AJ Hinch. Well, by the way, Detroit is looking interesting. But a lot of this stuff in baseball has just been constantly changing. It does take a little bit to lump up to the change. My thing of this is, because eventually we're going to have robotic strike zones. I'm not saying that you got to completely take away the morality of the game, because you got to have an umpire there. And you love it when there were moments where the managers would end up, screaming and yelling at the umpires. Players would end up tossing their bats or their gloves or their helmets or hats, and they would not be happy. They've had moments like this. I don't think you completely take that away. I think that if someone's smart enough, that if you have a motioning detector that'll call you balls and strikes, then at that point, it would make the game a lot better. because then we would not have inaccuracies of balls and strikes. I know people get pissed about that. And balls and strikes have been called the absolute worst this year. I've been seeing it with a lot of umpires. It's as if we always have, clones of Angel Hernandez behind the plate. We all have done that. We've all have made comments about this. My thought about this foreign substance thing is, I understand the policy. I understand that they are trying to keep no cheaters away. But be careful how you even reiterate it. Because certain teams and players will never forget the cheaters who supposedly won the World Series, and that was it. So, however that they're going to man this thing, I mean, you give it your absolute best, but eventually, once this all gets corrected, and hopefully when everything falls into place, then we're not going to feel so like giddy and uppity, and we have to, rush to our phones to Twitter and talking about it. Because again, I have been fed up and done with how Major League Baseball has been playing. But I've learned enough to not even care about the internals of baseball. I watch the game personally. I've played it. I understand it. And I've learned a lot from it through life. But I do it for the love of the game. That's all that I do. Make it better for the love of the game. Don't make it better for publicity stunts. That's all it is when it comes to Major League Baseball. Time now for the hot press. All right, so Pro Bowl wide receiver Demaryius Thomas is retiring from the NFL as a Bronco. Man, he was an absolute talent at Georgia Tech, and was a 4-time Pro Bowl selection, and of course is a Super Bowl champion after winning the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 50 with Peyton Manning and with a lot of really good players. This was what he ended up sitting down for a short video and opened up and said, "I'm Demaryius Thomas. I finally came to a decision to hang it up. I'm going to retire, and I'm going to retire a Denver Bronco. I'm done, and I did well." So the 33-year-old will be honored by the Broncos during their home opener on September 26th against the New York Jets, where he finished his career in 2019 before he went to other places like New England, and didn't really end up playing all that long. Did end up having a lot of different injuries from there. But since then, Thomas was one of the first 2 first-round picks for the Denver Broncos in the 2010 NFL Draft. Tim Tebow was the other. Spent 9 seasons with the Broncos, finished his career as the team's second leading receiver in yards, only behind Rod Smith, and is the third in franchise history in 655 catches, behind Smith and Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe. Played 10 seasons overall, finished with 724 catches, 9,763 yards, with 63 touchdown catches. Demaryius Thomas was a hell of a player. And it's funny because I remembered how much of his career boosted the second Peyton Manning came into the building. And a lot of people were so impressed by him because then you had him and Eric Decker. Think about it at times, too, where you had Wes Welker. I wished I would have seen a time where you had Brandon Stokely and a lot of them, because I thought that would have been a lot of fun to watch that receiver core. But Denver has been so known for really good receivers over the course of years. They just couldn't get the quarterback right. But Peyton Manning came into the building and absolutely uprised his career. I think he was a heck of a wide receiver. I also do believe he was a heck of a talent. And it's the best decision that he can make for himself. So best of luck to you in retirement, Demaryius. Loved watching you play from the outside in. And yeah, heck of a career. I could almost see him maybe at some point being in the Hall of Fame, but I wouldn't think first round talent or first ballot talent. So Gary Bettman, of course, there has been a lot of rumored buzzes in the NHL with the potential discipline of the Chicago Blackhawks will hinge on independent investigation into concerning allegations. So there's the league ended up learning about the sexual assault allegations against former assistant coach Brad Aldrich relatively recently, while it found them concerning. So, and this was in the pre-Stanley Cup Finals news conference up on Monday. Once they start to know really more about the facts and more about the investigations, that's where they are going to. They may initiate a couple of suspensions or whatnot. But it's really interesting how I've seen this happen. And listen, there have been certain teams that have gone through this type of investigation. But to see this happen in the hockey realm, I think is a first for me. But who knows how this investigation might go? One, I'm not a fan of it at all. I do believe that there should be disciplinary actions. But it's unfortunate when you have a Blackhawks team with Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, and a lot of really good players. And this was just the start of their dynasty in 5 years. And that's where ultimately becomes the absolute crack in their history. So, however that this really goes about with Gary Bettman, the commissioner, and the NHL investigative team, we'll see on the coming days. But it's just going to be interesting to see when all the facts come out. So the LA Angels of Anaheim moved Mike Trout to the 60-day IL on target in injury recovery. So ruling out his return until after the All-Star break. So Trout was swung a bat at batting cage Monday for the first time since his strained right calf in May 17th. Said he's doing really well, actually. He's on pace and he's on target. Trout's injury was more than 50% healed. And listen, Mike Trout, as you already know, I mean, heck of an athlete, heck of a player. Definitely a class act. But again, where the Angels stand at right now, it's just but thanks, Payo Time. I appreciate you coming on by for his first split second, man. Appreciate you. But the whole thing of it is that the franchise thrives through him, and that's it. But still, the Angels, until they actually get over the humps of where they're going to be at, I mean, I don't really see them getting any further. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is doing really, really good. But other than that, it's you're just hoping and waiting that your all-star is going to end up coming back soon from IL. So hopefully best of recovery for Mike Trout. Can't wait to see him back up out on the field. And we'll see what happens. But then a quick score update. 4-1 so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs or the Stanley Cup final between the Canadiens and the Lightning. That is the hot press. Well, guys, coming up, I don't really particularly have a best for last, but I mean, ultimately, I'm going to break down some of these young players that we've seen in the playoffs that I think could very much either be on the uprise or they could be kind of slightly coming down. And these were either teams that made the playoffs or teams that have not. But I'll have a lot to talk about here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. For a lot of my fantasy gurus coast to coast, far and wide, who love fantasy sports and also love to gamble, love to bet on fantasy sports, even esports for a lot of our gaming geeks out there, myself included. There is a place that you can end up betting on all of that. That's called thrivefantasy.com. It's a great site. There's different play tables that get refreshed every day of the week, and you could be winning up to 15 grand in those pool plays. To sign yourself up, go online, download the apps on your mobile phone or your mobile device through Google Play in the App Store, thrivefantasy.com. When you sign up and you put in $20 into your first deposit, use promo code SS Network, and Thrive Fantasy promises that they will match it to $50 into your first play. There are so many different matchups that you could go head-to-head with or playing an entire pool play and win cold, hard cash just like that. What are you guys waiting for? Sign yourself up at thrivefantasy.com. Use promo code SS Network for the $50 matchup. That's thrivefantasy.com. Promo code SS Network.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
Once a raider, bruh, always a raider, bruh. Shit simple as that. You look silver and black. Lot of bread invested in that O-line. Car insurance cost the arm and the leg to reach that goal line. It's go time.
Well, I want to say first and foremost to everybody all here, everybody that was all up onto the chat line, and of course, all of our fellow viewers who are currently watching me right now. I appreciate every single one of you guys for being here up onto the show tonight. It's been fun. There's been a lot of really good takes. The Stanley Cup final so far between Montreal and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Lightning are absolutely giving it to the Habs 4-1 so far. You know, I would be doing play-by-play commentary up onto the Stanley Cup final, but I don't know. I truly don't know. I mean, you got Tampa Bay who's back in there, who wants to go back-to-back as Stanley Cup champions, and a team that you already know, they're already $18 million over the cap hit. But other than that, they want to win a championship before they blow this whole thing up. And it's understandable. And then on the other side, you have a team that hasn't been there in 28 years since the last time they won it in 93, and they want to bring the Stanley Cup back to the hearts of Canada. And, you know, it's an interesting matchup. I don't know. I might cover one of the games. Who knows? But it's an interesting Stanley Cup final, not going to lie. But I do see that there is a lot at stake for both Tampa Bay and for Montreal. So I'm going to finish up this take with my with the NBA and a lot of these youngsters, because I think it's important to really kind of know just where these players really sit themselves on the uprise and which ones I think are kind of having some struggles here and there, but might not be so far away. But there's no listing. All it basically is are they on the rise or are they kind of, on the downfall? So I'll start off with this with some of the youngsters about here. Let's talk about Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. I do believe that he is up on the uprise. Listen, you are getting an absolute premier scorer, a guy who can open up, whether it's down on the perimeter, whether it's on the wings, anywhere, outside of the 3-point line. You are getting an absolute shooter that is going to be up onto the uprise. I mean, they're in the Eastern Conference Final. And it was really interesting to me. But the reason I think he's also up on the uprise, Clint Capella, a lot of these other young core groups that I truly think you give it at least a couple years on this puppy, and Atlanta might be the most interesting team. They may be the most interesting, if not fun, watching team. Because the fact of you could be Trae Young reliant, but at the same time, this could be a team that maybe might make some noise down the road because they haven't won a championship in a long time, but Trae Young might look to change things. Okay, Ben Simmons, is on the downfall. The reason why the Ben Simmons up to this point, look, what more do I really have to say about it? He's a guy that can't, will not, and doesn't want to shoot. He's a really good defensive asset with his size and then, of course, with his ball handling skills. But when you can't shoot and you're a guy that's getting paid $35 million, in this league, that's all about shooters, and you can't shoot, you're a point guard. I mean, that's the worst thing that you could even say about yourself. But you already know that Ben Simmons is just right there upon that downfall. I wouldn't explain anymore. I think it basically covers it, but it is what it is. Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to say he's up on the uprise. We're seeing the best of Donovan Mitchell's play. But the only thing that is on the cusp of making this a downfall is because when I look at Utah, and granted, I love Rudy Gobert. I like Rudy Gobert, but there are also times where he can hold himself liable outside of his defensive play. Then there's Joe Ingles. He's usually half and half. There are times where it's just like, look, I love watching Donovan Mitchell play, and I think he is going to be one guy that's going to win a championship. But look, I just think that in Donovan's play, he's right there up onto the uprise as a young player. I think he's really kind of starting to grow into his own play style, but eventually they are going to need to get pieces around him because Mike Conley is a really good ball distributor and is another veteran presence that can be vocal with him. That's what's really changed up a lot of his game. But eventually the Utah Jazz need to do something about this. Okay, so Devin Booker, he is definitely up onto the uprise. A lot of people have been saying this could be the future Kobe Bryant that we're seeing here. Look, I'm never going to compare some of these young kids to some of the all-time greats. I just don't do that. But Devin Booker has been really, really good. He's impressed me a lot. They're in the Western Conference Final. And Chris Paul allowed him to be himself. Only the confidence part of it, the leadership part of it, is one that Chris Paul has been able to take over. So it didn't feel like it was Devin Booker reliant. They have a shooter. They even got a really good bench. DeAndre Ayton has really stepped up to the plate in his game. And I do think that Phoenix down the road, as I mentioned before, could be a team that could be intimidating in the Western Conference. I don't know how they would face off against the Warriors and the Lakers and the Clippers, but this Phoenix team is really good. I was very surprised by this young group. They look like they've matured. They look like they've done really well, and that's where I think Devin Booker's stock uprises. All right, Zion Williamson. Okay, my thing of it is, it's on its downfall, but not for long. Zion, the thing about New Orleans is, this is a franchise that is not invested in basketball. It's always been invested in the Saints. And the problem about this is that Zion's such a talented player, but a lot of people were concerned about his size. They were concerned about his build because he's a hyper-athletic player and plays in a position that I'm not going to say like Anthony Davis, but somewhere similarly to those lines that he could basically be injury prone. I don't know, but I cannot put him up onto the uprise yet until I see something from New Orleans that really catches my attention that I think changes that. But other than that, this is just a respectful downfall for right now until I get the best out of Zion. And he is growing in this league. Don't get me wrong. He really is growing, but we'll see. Okay, RJ Barrett of the New York Knicks. Here's what's interesting, because I do think also Obi Toppin is going to be a really good breakout player next year for the Knicks. Nobody expected the New York Knicks to get into the playoffs. But RJ Barrett, I felt like, was a guy that put up numbers, put up baskets. He's on a slight uprise, like 50-50. Because the only person that was held liable through the playoffs was Julius Randle. But even Julius Randle was a good player to getting into the playoffs. But then the second you're in it, that's what changes pace of play. And I think that that was something that they really had to get together. But I think RJ Barrett, a lot of people really turned their heads on him. But I thought he was a pretty impressive player that coming out of this draft. And I think when you see him and Obi Toppin click, I think the Knicks might have something going here. I don't know. They might have something really going their way, but we'll figure that out down the road. Okay, LaMelo Ball. My thing is his stock personally is on the uprise. LaMelo Ball was more than impressive than I think a lot of us, including myself, had thought. A guy who can distribute the ball very quickly. I think also has a better jump shot than his brother does. And it's so interesting because a lot of people fell into this spiral because of the family, because of LeVar Ball. But maybe he was doing it a favor. Okay, a lot of people could get distracted over the LeVar Ball antics. But in a small organization like Charlotte, which is not really a free agent friendly destination, but you do have young players like PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier. So there are some young players that I think at some point are going to figure this puppy out. But I do think that LaMelo Ball has really exceeded those expectations that we thought of him. And I can't wait to see him play more. I really cannot wait to see him play more. I really, really can. But other than that, I also do think that it's a small market. I don't know what kind of free agents they may attract, but who knows? It's going to be interesting to see this moving forward. Okay, and then, finally, while we're amongst the topics, Jason Tatum, you already know, his stock is kind of up on the uprise, but it's very, very half and half. Boston's going to figure out a way to really clean up this mess that they've had. And I know it started with Danny Ainge stepping down, Brad Stevens takes over, and then they ended up getting themselves a new head coach, which, by the way, I had predictions of Rick Carlisle going to Boston, Mark Jackson going to Dallas, but that completely flunked everything. But Jason Tatum has proved to me a bunch of times. Now they may need to clean this They need to clean this thing up because this is a team that's got potentials to make it through and through. They can, but ultimately, it all has to start internally. If they can't get this thing right in Boston, and then you've got all of these picks that one of them is going to be a lightning in the bottle, the other one is going to be the potential superstar. Boston's got to make it work. And believe me, this is a premier franchise that can make this work. But again, Jason Tatum is on the slight uprise for right now, only for 50-50, because I do think that there is a lot of potentials in him. But the rest of Boston has got to get clicking. And who knows? They might be on pace to maybe going and getting themselves a big time trade. I don't know. And then finally, Luka Doncic. He is by far up on the uprise. There is not an absolute doubt about it. There's not. Luka Doncic is ridiculous. As a young 22-year-old who plays like this, the problem of it is for Dallas, And I find it very strange because this is not a premier franchise, but Mark Cuban will spend money. He'll spend money on the right pieces because it's all about the business success, not the, paying to get fans in the stands type of thing. So Luka has got to at least get a reliable superstar next to him. This thing with Kristaps Porzingis doesn't seem to be working. I've been hearing about this internally, that their relationships not really sound. So they got to make this work for Luka's sake, because you don't get a talent like this very often. So if they can't make this right, then I'm afraid Dallas may not be seeing Luka for very, very long. I'm not saying that he's going to be gone quickly, but don't waste the time. Don't take the time for granted. Get him a superstar in that building if Dallas really wants to win multiple championships down the road. But yeah, I trust me, all these youngsters that I've nailed here on this lineup, there's some that are on their uprise or up onto their downfall, or even just slightly 50-50. But again, I truly look at some of these players, and the way that I see this is because, look, we did not expect LaMelo Ball to really overly exceed expectations. I knew he'd be a baller, and from what I was told, he had a better jump shot than Lonzo. And then the second he comes into the league, he proved me wrong. And it's the funny thing about some of these young players, because again, we take college hoops for granted. A lot of these young kids are coming in from like 17, 18, and they're already coming into the NBA, or they're going into the G League. This is where they have to really come hand in hand with this, because why do you think some of these other players have gone at least a second, if not third year back into college? Because they wanted to improve their jump shots. They wanted to improve themselves, even in their lives, where they could be reliable role models, even adults, that can basically face off against pressures. And that's what it's meant to be. Zion's case, because of the fact of New Orleans right now, who knows? Who knows what that looks like in the coming days? But I'm very surprised to see exactly what that may be and what that might look like. But I just felt like this was right. I felt like that this was absolutely right. These are some of these players here on the uprise. Some of them that may be up on the downfall. Some of them might not be down there for very long. They're only there because of the fact of, too, is that when it comes to the organizations and what they have around them, that's what's putting them in this position. But overall, I think this is about right for some of these youngsters. So, alrighty, guys, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all latest notifications on future and past shows. And we will see you guys probably, hopefully, Wednesday night. But take care, you guys. Have a great one. Be safe, and we will see you soon. Take care.